Welcome to Multimedia Writing and Design, Summer Edition. Week I don't know how to do it. Week 2. And here's a little bit more about me before we get to some of the lecture. Well, here we go. So today we're going to talk about some of the readings from last week and some of the readings from this week. We're going to talk about equity, type, and arguments. But first, I just wanted to remind you that assignment number 2 is due this Saturday by 11:59. And remember, you only can select from that list of products unless you've got approval from me, and then make sure you pay attention to these background and details for completing your assignment. So this is just an example. This is from another class, and it was for a different project, but of kind of a cool CD cover or album cover, and how it practices pretty good Cracrapio principles. So you can see the visual weight is really good, where you're going to go to probably the cat first, and then to Midnight, and then to Predator, which I think is the name of either the band or the album. They've got that information there. You can see how there's like this kind of cool color scheme. You can see how it's drawn together from the browns on the top and the bottom, how black's being used to connect to the jaguar or the cheetah. I can't remember what that is, but it was one of the carousels animals at Baltimore Zoo. Here's another one. This was for a different assignment, but you can see how these sort of infographic-y advertisements for these people are practicing good Cracrapio principles. You're probably going to look at the pictures, the faces first. So those are the largest visual weight, and you'll move on to the largest type and then move down. And you can see how they're using, alignments pretty well, especially with the Kate Dobson one and connecting colors. And then this one kind of uses different graphics to distinguish information, using bold there, that sort of contrast. And so it's got some organization. One kind of flaw with this one is just that use of center alignment. You can see how that's kind of a problem with design. But again, these are different purposes, so they're not going to necessarily look like yours, or you won't do something like this. It might be similar. But again, I just want to give you an idea of what good practice looks like. So these are some pretty good uses of Cracrapio when you guys design. Just keep these in mind about how they are using visual weight well, and the organization, the contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity practice pretty well in these. Okay, here are a couple more. Again, this isn't the assignment that you have. This is a past assignment, and I'm just showing you good examples of design. So the first thing I want to talk about with regards to our readings was the Rapunzel effect and genre. And the Rapunzel effect is just this idea that there's this rhetorical prejudice that something has to be presented in one way, as one type of text, one type of communication. So kind of like with academic writing, essays follow those academic conventions. There's not much imagery. It's usually not, you don't have color graphics. It's just that black text on a white page. And it's written in certain ways. But there are other ways to look at things and other ways to think about it. So genre and equality and audience. So rhetorical equality rather is this communication ethic that's concerned with technological access. So it's web accessible. It accesses for a variety of devices. Are using alt text so that people with disabilities can use screen readers to access the information, and it's got circulatory access, so it's easy to share. But again, it's usually just one primary text with these add-ons or other things. Rhetorical equity, on the other hand, is a communication practice that has a lot of access strategies. So you've got that techno access plus the circulatory access plus readability access and preferential access. So that readability access means that you're writing it in different ways for different readers. So maybe you'll have that infographic that's written in more popular language without all the jargon that an academic paper might come with, or the technical terms for a different discipline. And then you've got it written a different way. But it's side by side. Okay, there's no really privileged text. It's how do you want to get with the text? Maybe you'll read one day and the other another day. And it's also preferential access. So access to audiences and preferred ways of reading. So do you prefer, say, that infographic, or do you prefer reading something that's more print text without the graphics and the imagery? And one thing to keep in mind, right, is just how kairotic is it? And kairos is the idea that you're communicating something at the right place and the right time. When you have this rhetorical equity, you can be like that. I don't know how many times you guys have done this, but just going to Wikipedia to review something, right? Because you don't have time to read the whole text again, or then going to the whole text because there was something maybe on Wikipedia that you wanted to know more about. So again, that preferential access, that readability access, has to do with being kairotic, right time and the right place to present something. Okay, so right time can be related to holidays, right? Like July 4th just happened, so you'd probably want to capitalize on that, have something about July 4th or connected to July 4th when you're starting to advertise or share something. So right time and then the right place. And the right place would be like, what media do you want to present? Where do you think your audience is really gonna see it? So for instance, like your poster might fit best on a parenting magazine website, or one of those, I think, social media places for kids, social media platforms for kids. Anyway, so here's just another way to consider the access instead of that previous slide. This one breaks it down into a table. If you want to look more into it, of course, you can pause the video, but this is sort of, what you're considering when you're practicing rhetorical equality or rhetorical equity. And then here's a final way to look at it. And this would be the infographic way. So just presenting you a number of ways to imagine how to think about the difference of rhetorical equity and rhetorical equality. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about typeface here too. So this is something that's vital to your understanding of design and the Crapio principles, making a connection to your audience and communicating connotation through type. If you want to know more about my projects or anything, here's some extra credit opportunity. You can pause to check that out. So typeface, that's the thing you see on the screen that's in front of you. And then font is just that collection of letters. If you want to be really technical about it, but usually people, and I do this too, is using kind of interchangeably. So some things to consider are readability versus legibility. And readability is the facility or comfort with which you can read a whole text and can be comprehended. So we usually don't read, just one word at a time. We read few words at a time, whole words, so kind of rapid guessing. So readability, again, it's that major text that you're reading. Is it readable? Or do I have a hard time parsing it? Legibility is a little bit different. It's the ability to easily recognize the letter forms and word forms built from them. So this is not very legible, all right? So picking out individual letters here is challenging. It's hard to discuss readability because it's entirely illegible. Here are some reasons that legibility and readability are important. So if you've ever gone by street signs and they're all in capital letters where there's no word shape there to make anything legible. So you can see how Michigan is just a square, has the same word shape. But then when you start to get uppercase and lowercase, the word shapes change. So if I was to draw like around the word, it would be going up and down and then around, instead of just a big block of text. And that helps with reading in signs. Another couple things to think about, just with regards to typeface, would be kerning and letter spacing. So you've got letter spacing, which is a bunch of letters together, and then that kerning, which would be just between individual letters. And you can see how the kerning with the V and the A, it just makes it look like it's more together, just because of the word shape or the letter shape and how the spacing fits. But these are things that I would definitely think about adjusting, especially when you're making your letters. For instance, just take a look at McDaniel's logo type and tell me how they're using these to make it work. So connotations, right? So again, the typefaces that you choose set a mood for readers. Times New Roman, very serious, professional. Brush script, kind of whimsical. Curls MT, children's book. Camps or something like that. Campy even. And then for Dana, would be like professional and casual at the same time. So again, be very thoughtful about how you're using your typefaces. I mean, typeface is really important. Take a look at these two toy stores and consider what the different typefaces connote. Pretty sure one of them is going to give you the feeling that you can let your kid run around the store, pick his or her nose, jump up and down, start playing with the toys. The other one probably has that feeling that you got to be dressed up to go to the toy store. You know, put on your Sunday best. And probably want to keep the kids from running around because you're going to be watched by a pretty scary looking jester who's not going to tolerate any joy. Okay, so here's an awkward transition, and we're going to talk about 5 important things that have to do with argument, visual argument, and Birdsell and Rourke. So these are pretty important to think about when you're putting words together with typeface. So visual images can, of course, be vague and ambiguous, but words and sentences can also be vague and ambiguous, since we often clarify the latter with them. Meaning in visual images is not arbitrary or indeterminate and can stand alone, and context is important. There's a wide range of cultural assumptions, cues, time-sensitive information, and knowledge that goes into understanding how visual images work with their words. And you can just see, some kind of examples about how you've got hope connected to the Obama poster, and we read about this, and then how it works as these references in parody, and how you have to have some context to really get what's being said and how it's being made fun of. So comedy is really connected to context. So visual arguments can also just be made themselves, right? Don't necessarily have to have words, but we can see how these are putting things together. So this one has to do with practicing safe sex. Don't be stupid. They put it in this like war metaphor, which is kind of bizarre. And I don't know if it's the best way to present this, but you can see how it's making a visual argument about sexual activity. And then you see this on the right. I guess my right, maybe it's your left, the baby, anyway, the toddler with all the brands. We've got this visual argument being made about being branded as soon as you're born and how that, you become part of this capitalistic industry. Here's some more related to cigarettes, and you can see how these arguments, again, don't necessarily have words or have few words, and you can see how it's just making a point about not smoking and what smoking can do. So when you're thinking about the context, the things to consider when you're looking at visual images are the visual context. That's the sequence of images and the ambient visual environment. So again, that has to do with if you've got a coffee shop or something, where you're going to put the images, where's the best place to put them to create this environment, the lighting and things like that. And then there's the sequences of images. So in advertising, if you think of a magazine, are you going to put, your, I guess, how will you put your advertisement? Will you want to put your Shell gas station advertisement right after an article about the ethics of environmental protection and things like that? So that would be that immediate visual context, that kind of order of things. And the verbal context would be the words working within and around the image. Just with hope, what words do you want to put around your potato? Do you want to have, hope be part of the potato, engagement, smartening your kids, getting your kids smarter? I don't know what kind of things you're going to use. And the visual cultures, those are the conventions of vision that includes what it means to see or represents seeing, as well as changes in the meaning of particular elements of visual vocabulary. So cultural conventions, the visual culture part of vision would be something that you see as dangerous, right? So if you look at the left, or this picture of my kid on the car, one of the conventions could be, you just see this, oh my God, I can't believe that kid's on the car. That would be part of the conventions of seeing. You don't usually see that, especially if the car is moving. Then you've got even more of a cultural convention. But cultural conventions can change. It could just be, oh, that's normal. A kid's on a car. We could just see it that way as nothing out of the ordinary. Another thing that you're going to be thinking about is how are you going to represent, your objects, your toys. And I remember when I was a kid, if you've ever seen the original Roseanne, people said that I used to look like one of Roseanne's daughters. And I was just curious, do I represent or resemble? Well, it would be more resemblance. And this is kind of an important thing to distinguish, right, between resemblance and representation. So resemblance means a picture looks like it. And in this example, I really don't look like it. I should have shown a picture when I was younger. So You could even say that that picture, right, with the high, that's more representation. So it's metaphoring me. So resemblance, though, like representation, is fraught with judgment. Okay, so even when we get something that looks like it, there's often a lot of editing that goes into it, or could be, which makes it a problem. So this is just an example, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of examples like this, but you could probably, pause this and try to pick all the things that are different in this image, which is supposed to be resemblance, but it starts to be on that spectrum toward representation of a person. So you've got the original image of Faith Hill without all the text on it, and then you've got the image that goes into on the magazine. And you can see things were added. One thing you might want to look at, which I just noticed as you start counting these, kind of interesting, is just this arm is added here, and I'm not sure why. And then you can see how things have been, sculpted off or shaved off there. Okay, but again, pause and just take a look at this. It's kind of fun to just kind of mark all the things, which things have changed. See if you can see. It's like that game when you're a kid, what's different in this picture. And then here's another example. This is just Kevin McIntyre. That was for a project that students did. It's kind of funny. You see his resemblance right here, and then you can see they've metaphored him to represent like Darth Vader, which is kind of funny. But anyway, that's it. Again, I'm available if you want to meet, if you want to talk about your projects, just let me know. Otherwise, take care, and I will see you next week with another video. All right, bye.